Greetings to our listeners. My name is Janinha Piazzetta, and this is the H3 Pink Ribbon podcast. The goal of our podcast is to educate and support all breast cancer patients, survivors, and their loved ones regarding the latest information and resources related to breast cancer diagnosis, treatment, and long-term survivorship. The H3 Pink Ribbon podcast is part of the powerful educational work of H3, Health, Hope, Healing. H3 is a nonprofit education organization based in Miami Beach, Florida, of which I am the founder and director. H3's mission is to provide breast cancer education, awareness, and support through a variety of activities, including professional presentations and individualized support. This podcast is about everything breast cancer. That's our tagline. However, H3 is well known for supporting other types of cancer. When people reach out to H3 for support for other types of cancer, I always make an effort to help and expand H3 services. That's why today our podcast is going beyond breast cancer. Our guest today is a male cancer survivor, an H3 supporter, and the 2023 Miami Beach Mayor candidate, Michael Gongora. Michael, as I call him, is very important to H3. We go back a few years when he caught a typo about the date in our first fundraising event flyer. And there, he offered to pay for the new corrected printing. Over the years, he has been a strong and vocal supporter of H3's mission. And last year, we came up with the H3 Beach Walk Series, a post-pandemic walking series for cancer survivors and the community members. Thank you, Michael, and welcome.
Thank you, Janina. Excited to be here today.
Today, we are not going to talk about politics or breast cancer, but about your journey as a cancer survivor. Michael, tell us about how you first discovered you had cancer.
I was lucky in that cancer showed its presence to me.
Oh,
I had a lump on my neck near my right lymph node. And like many people, I thought, I must have an infection. It must be a swollen lymph node. But it didn't go away. Even though I didn't feel sick, it was growing little by little and getting bigger. So I realized I needed to go to the doctor. And it started a journey that I did not think I would be going on, a journey that ultimately led to cancer. But there were so many steps along the way. For those of you dealing with a similar situation, I discovered that if you have insurance, they make you go through so many hoops before you finally get to the study you need.
and that takes time.
It does. They made me first go for an ultrasound, which said that I had a lump, which I knew because it was visible. So that really wasn't necessary. But eventually I was able to actually go in and do some testing to see what was in there. And I was shocked, quite frankly, when I got the call an August day on Bluetooth, driving with my partner in the car, and the doctor told me that it was, in fact, cancer.
What kind?
It was HPV cancer, which at the time I knew nothing about. Of course, it's very scary for somebody that's never gone through a health issue before to hear you have cancer of any type. It causes concern, questions. You become an amateur medical investigator, Googling and trying to read everything you can online to find out more information about what to do.
So tell me, how was the process of getting a diagnosis followed by your treatment journey with chemo radiation, and did you have surgery?
No, I did chemo and radiation. Fortunately, no surgery. Um, Eventually, I got the diagnosis, and through research, I felt that probably the two best centers in South Florida for my type of cancer was either the Sylvester Cancer Center or the Baptist Miami Cancer Institute. Both were the top ranked facilities in South Florida. Fortunately, I was able to get appointments with two of the top doctors at both facilities within about a month, which is,
Wow, you waited a month?
well, no, I started working immediately, but one I couldn't get an appointment for like 2 weeks, and one I don't think I could get an appointment for another 3 weeks. No, I didn't wait, but it takes a while for those going through this journey to get medical appointments, even when you know you have an issue. So I treated with both. I went into both. I listened to what the doctors had to say. And that was actually, for me, Janina, the hardest decision throughout was which facility I was going to treat with. They had slightly similar recommendations and slightly different recommendations. I ultimately treated at Baptist Miami Cancer Institute, and I was extremely satisfied with my treatment. I have nothing but wonderful things to say about them.
Why did you choose that place?
Ooh, okay. The reason I chose Baptist Miami Cancer Institute over Sylvester, I actually thought the doctor at Sylvester had a slightly better reputation, and also made me feel that he had more experience. However, this was during the pandemic. I had cancer in 2020. So Sylvester
That
was
was
a
tough.
very, odd year, bad year for me. It ended up, Sylvester had a lot of homeless people outside, and because of the treatment and COVID, it was difficult to get in the hospital. You couldn't bring a guest. It was very sparse, the rooms that you would wait in, and it it concerns me. Baptist Miami Cancer Institute, of course, is much newer, and I tell everybody it's like being like at a Hyatt hotel. It's gorgeous, it's well done. They have a pianist and a harpist that plays music during the middle of the day throughout the hospital. It was very calming and relaxing.
That's in South Miami, right?
Correct, Kendall.
Kendall,
Yeah,
Kendall.
Kendall Drive, and another reason was at Sylvester, they wanted to do a preemptive operation, a tonsillectomy, and remove my tonsils because most people that have HPV end up having their tonsils impacted. So I would have done three modalities: a surgery, chemo, and radiation. Baptist Miami Cancer Institute wanted to do the chemo and the radiation first, and then see if my tonsils were impacted, which would remove surgery from the equation. And that played into my decision making too. And as it turned out, I never needed the tonsillectomy. I still have my tonsils intact. So for
And
me,
that's good.
yes, for me, I made the right choice because one facility made me feel better, and I was going to be there every day, and secondarily, they weren't recommending surgery right away, which concerned me to start with a surgery, which I wasn't sure if I needed or not.
So let me ask you this. From the time that you felt a nodule on your neck, how long did you take to look for help, look for a doctor?
I noticed at some point in June of 2020, and I believe I started the medical journey in July with my medical doctor.
So it was just a month, basically.
Less, a couple of weeks. I knew that after a couple of weeks of having a growth on your neck, something is wrong.
Something is wrong,
Something's
right.
there that's not supposed to be there. So no, I jumped on it, and I had my diagnosis by August, and I started my treatment in September.
So let's say that with all this waiting time for the new appointments, and did you wait, 2 months?
Yeah, my appointments were all pretty much done by August, so about 2 months, and my treatment started in September.
So I guess that it wasn't that serious because otherwise I believe they move a little faster. When I got diagnosed with breast cancer, they gave me like in a month I was already in surgery, you know?
Oh my goodness. No, mine, I understand that mine was stage one.
Stage one. I was stage two, but 5 centimeters.
Oh my goodness.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
Mine also, I was asymptomatic. I had no pain or discomfort. I just had a lump on my neck. So I wasn't suffering. I was lucky in that way. But I wanted to get in. It was me pushing to get the appointments, me pushing to start treatment. I just had this idea once I got the diagnosis that I want to move as quickly as possible to handle this and do whatever I can medically to get healthy.
So today, through your experience, you have an idea how the medical system works.
Yes.
And unfortunately, many people are not lucky like you and me. I was lucky, you were lucky, and we moved faster, with the treatment. But some other people, they have to wait for a long time. So what is your idea about this medical system? What can we do to change that waiting time,
Well,
which can be fatal for many patients?
one of the things for me is the insurance making you go through all these steps to get to the proper tests you need. My doctor knew I never needed an ultrasound, and the fact that my insurance made me go through that ultrasound first before approving further testing, we wasted weeks. By waiting to schedule the ultrasound, get the ultrasound back, have the doctor read the ultrasound. So I think the insurance carriers need to know that they need to skip through whatever's not medically necessary. The doctors know what we need. So some of these procedures are frustrating, and I would like to see them done away with.
And do you think that there is a difference between state insurance, federal insurance, and private insurance in terms of waiting time?
I'm not an expert, so I don't know. I know that I was lucky
You were
that
lucky.
I had health insurance provided by my employer, the law firm, and I had upgraded to the PPO, the better insurance, because they provide, for the attorneys at my office, they provide an HMO-style insurance as part of the benefits package. If you want the better insurance, you pay part of the premium, and I've always chosen to have the better insurance.
Pay for the premium.
Right. I never knew that I would need it, but it ended up being a very good thing.
That's great. That's great. So let me ask you, how did you cope with your diagnosis and treatment?
Whew. Well, the diagnosis seems like a whirlwind. It's just, I wanted to get medical attention and start treatment. So during that process, again, really the hardest decision was Sylvester or Baptist MCI. Once I'd made my decision and got into treatment, it's very scary. You don't know what lies ahead. The first radiation treatment wasn't that bad. Radiation on your neck gets worse and worse as you go through daily radiation for 7 weeks. So at the start, it's not that bad. The final week, I found
How many weeks of radiation?
7 weeks of daily radiation. It was 35 treatments.
I had 32 days in a row.
Yeah, it's a
It
lot.
was the same?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
chemo once a week. Chemo is obviously more impactful on your body. It lasts longer. Radiation is a shorter session.
Once a week?
Once a week chemo.
Yeah, for breast cancer, it usually is every 3 weeks.
Oh.
But I was more impacted by the radiation than chemo.
Both start to play factors during the treatment. I started out feeling so good and feeling like I could conquer the world. You got this attitude like, I got this, everything's going to be fine. And then I can't remember when, but it was probably after like the second or third week.
Third week.
Yeah. I just had a dramatic change in energy level, appetite. Um, I went from, acting kind of normal, just doing my treatments as I went, to like lethargic, not wanting to leave the bed, very, very little appetite. Everything hurt and became uncomfortable to put in your mouth.
Because also it's right there where you swallow, so it's water, it's food, everything goes through that area.
Yeah.
So it must have been very uncomfortable.
It is, and you develop sores in your mouth. So a lot of different foods hurt. There's a lot of different things that you don't want to put in your mouth because it hurts and it's uncomfortable.
Such as
Everything.
everything.
I mean, I can tell you one of the horrible ones was tomato sauce. That's a no-no.
Because I think the acidity, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you eat orange or tangerines as well.
Yes, fruit altogether. By the end, there were only about 3 things that I could eat with any consistency. One was the shakes, which you take to supplement your lack of eating. Food-wise, I could eat very bland pasta with no sauce or like maybe a little bit of butter or something, like a baby, how they like that pasta
Right.
with butter. And eggs. I always could eat eggs. My partner would mush them up like a little, like baby food, like an egg
Scramble.
salad, but with no spice, no salt, pepper, no mayonnaise. Everything I ate was very bland. I did not like any spices at all.
Do you still eat pasta and eggs these days?
Pasta and eggs. I'm telling you, I don't know if everybody else has the same experience as me, but pasta and eggs.
Have you lost weight?
Oh my goodness. I lost, over the 7 weeks of my treatment, I lost 30 pounds.
It's a lot. Actually, with breast cancer is always the opposite because they give us so much cortisone the night before chemo, and then somehow I believe the radiation in the area goes right straight to your thyroid. Then you develop a thyroid issue and you start to gain weight.
Oh no.
So it's always it's for breast cancer patients. It's a little different. But as we were, as you were telling us, you were telling the audience that, at some point after the third, fourth week, you start to kind of get a little depressed. You start to see things in a different way. Was there any point where you felt like you lost hope?
Honestly, no. I never lost hope, which is good. I was always positive that I was going to get past this issue and that my treatment would be successful. I can't tell you that my hope ever wavered. I stayed steadfast in my determination to get better. And whenever I would start to feel bad, when you go to get radiation, it's not just HPV neck radiation. There's people getting radiation that have a myriad of cancers in the waiting room, in the locker room, what have you. So sometimes I would see little children, and they were so
no.
brave, and that would break my heart. And I would see old people that looked like they were on the verge of death. And I just kept going. I was like, I'm going to get through this, especially the little kids.
It was a big mirror, right?
Yeah, I'd see these little kids, and I'm like, no, I am not going to feel bad for myself. If this little kid is here about to go through this treatment all by themselves during COVID without their parent, waiting alone because they couldn't have guests, I'm like, if this child is going to put on the brave face and get through it, I sure as hell am too.
How many people were in the room when you went for a session?
Well, when the session happened, I was, of course, alone with the medical professionals. But leading up to getting on the
In the waiting
equipment,
room.
right, there was a lobby waiting room, and then sometimes they would move us in to a locker room area that was men only. I assume women had their own that I wasn't invited to, because you would take your shirt off for radiation. Some people would take it off in the locker room. Some would take it off in the actual treatment room. But, you had to be able to put the radiation mask on you and then radiate your neck. So Yeah. In your case, radiate other areas.
Right now, because when you go through a state hospital, it's very different. Some days there was no chair to get chemo. You have to wait for 4 hours for a chair. Or you are in a room, everybody's getting chemo, and there is like a mirror of, you look at each other, and sometimes someone is ready to kick the bucket, let's say, and you are there like, okay, I'm gonna be fine. It's like you said, we see all these other people, other patients, and somehow it gives us support. It gives us motivation to keep going, right?
It does. And I saw people that I knew.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And chemo, not in radiation that I recall, but in chemo, on the chemo days, I ran into a couple of different people that I knew. Interestingly, men, one with the same exact cancer that I had, one with something different. And it was it was odd because at the time I was a sitting city commissioner, and I felt it important that I disclose my illness publicly at a meeting and let people know what I was going through, because they were going to have to see the changes as I went through treatment. If I had been a completely private person, I may have kept this for myself, but I was public about it. These other two people that I knew, I could tell were concerned seeing me, that I would, quote unquote, out them or something, which of course I didn't. But I could see that on top of the treatment, there was a level of concern on their part that they were running into me.
Well, and also there is, for some reason, when you get diagnosed with cancer, there is always a feeling of embarrassment, or you feel ashamed. I can't explain. It's a natural thing. It happened to me, and it happens to everybody, because I have been talking to people. What did you feel at that moment? And so it's, well, and then you lose your hair, and then you don't know how to show up, what people are going to say about it. It's a very real thing. But let me just, well, I found out about your cancer. I was, during COVID, at some point, I stopped social media. And one day I went back to it. And I saw everybody say, oh, Michael, thank God you are fine, you're okay. I'm like, and that's when I asked you privately, Michael, what happened to you? Because I didn't know. So there was also the COVID time where we were kind of isolated, and many times I kind of took a break from social media. But
Well, me too, but partially because of the treatment.
so you were never concerned about perhaps not surviving. That was out of the question, right?
I can't tell you. I never had a moment where I thought I was going to die. I always thought that I was going to get through it, and I had a wonderful support system as well.
Yeah, that's my next question. How did your support system help you navigate this experience, this journey?
Well, interestingly, during COVID, because I had been single for a long time, but during the COVID lockdown, I started having dinner with one of my neighbors every day for about 3 months, from March to June of 2020. And after 3 months of dining together and hanging out together and what have you, we started a romantic relationship. We started dating around the time that I started to notice the lump.
Your neighbors.
Yes, we were neighbors living in the same building, quarantining together. So, and I had only been dating him for approximately 6 weeks when I got my cancer diagnosis. I was actually told on a phone call, which was on Bluetooth in the car while we were driving away on what was supposed to be our first romantic staycation together. So it definitely put a damper on the festivities for the weekend. But he was amazing. I probably could have driven myself to radiation. The chemo day, they don't recommend that you drive at all. But I had my partner drive me 4 days a week. He worked one of those days. He had a job that he couldn't move. So my father took me on the 5th day. So
You
between
have a very close family,
I
right?
do, I do. I have a
Yeah,
close
I know
family.
your father, your mother. They are great
They're
people.
amazing. So I had people to drive me to treatment, and my partner Alberto, which is my father's name as well. I have the two Albertos. But Alberto, my partner, really took care of me after the 3rd week when I started to feel bad. I more or less moved into his unit, and he cooked for me and took care of me and really made the experience so much easier than it would have been otherwise. And I was very fortunate to have that. I know a lot of people don't. So I do realize how blessed I am, but I had somebody there to really help me.
Let's explain to our audience a little bit about HPV, which our research comes from the NIH, the National Institute of Health, and also the Center for Diseases Control and Prevention. There is a very high incidence of HPV in the United States. HPV is a common virus that can lead to certain types of cancer later in life. Many people are exposed to oral HPV in their life, and nearly everyone will get HPV. I don't know if that's real, at some point in their lives. More than 42 million Americans are infected with types of HPV that cause disease. About 13 million Americans, including teens, become infected every year. According to the CDC's Division of Cancer Prevention and Control, HPV is thought to cause 70% of oropharyngeal cancers in the United States. About 10% of men and 3.6% of women have oral HPV, and oral HPV infection is more common with older age. HPV can infect the mouth and throat and cause cancers on the back of the throat, including the base of the tongue and the tonsils. And this is called oropharyngeal cancer. Is that how you pronounce oropharyngeal cancer? But if you have a child, and this is amazing, it's a great factor. If you have a child at least 11 or 12 years old, getting that child 2 doses of HPV vaccine can prevent this cancer. Isn't that amazing? But nobody's talking about. So HPV vaccination can prevent over 90% of cancers caused by HPV, as well as anal, vaginal, cervical, and vulvar precancers, which is the precancer are the abnormal cells that can lead to cancer. I wonder, do parents know that? It is so simple and important. Talk to your child's doctor about HPV vaccination. What is your take on that?
It's amazing how this cancer can be prevented with the proper vaccine. Had I known about this when I was younger, I would have done treatment for it. In fact, I've talked about it with a lot of friends of mine that are even in their 40s now that have opted to get vaccinated. It used to be this was recommended in your teens or 20s. So if you have children and you're listening to this, please take it very seriously. Most HPV cancers are preventable. Please consider vaccinating your child. I know that vaccinations have become political for some reason, but for me, somebody that went through this treatment, I can tell you, you don't want your child to have to go through this. Please consider getting them vaccinated.
It's very, very important and preventable. Also, diagnosed with HPV-related throat cancer are the famous tennis player Martina Navratilova and actor Michael Douglas. So, on that note, I want to ask you this. Do you feel like there is a stigma related to HPV? Was it difficult for you to go public with your cancer?
You know, I didn't think about it, Janina. I acted on emotion, and I found out I had cancer. And at the next commission meeting, at about 8:25, our meeting starts at 8:30. I called the mayor, and I said I would like a point of personal privilege at the beginning of the meeting to say something. And the mayor goes, "Oh, well, what would you like to say?" I said, "That I have cancer." "Oh," he said, "Okay." I think he was stunned. But, I, I think there is stigma. And I noticed that when I was getting my treatment with other people. But because I've always lived my life somewhat transparently as a public servant and city commissioner,
And that's what I love about you.
thank you. I just said I'm going to let the public know that I have this, and I'm going to be going on a journey. I may be skinnier. I don't know if I'm going to lose my hair. I don't know if I'm going to lose my voice. But
Did
this
you
is what I
lose your
have.
hair?
I didn't lose a lot of hair. I was very lucky. I did lose my voice at the end of the treatment, which scared me even more. Um, because that's how I make my money as an attorney. And I was very concerned. In fact, you have to do a number of vocal exercises during the treatment to make sure you keep your ability to speak at different notes, so to speak, and exercise to keep your mouth fully open, because a lot of people after the treatment have problems opening their mouth wide.
Michael, what would you say to the people out there? What recommendations would you give to others, including some methods of prevention?
Well, the best way of preventing HPV is to get vaccinated. That's number one, number two, and number three. If I had a child, I wouldn't think twice at the appropriate age. I would make sure that they were vaccinated. I think for years people thought of HPV as a more of a woman's cancer. But really, as you stated, those percentages that you mentioned at the beginning are huge. 10% of men after a certain age can be impacted with oral HPV. So unless you're going to be abstinent your entire life and never have any type of connectivity, then really the safest way is get vaccinated.
Get vaccinated. Michael, thank you for taking the time for this special H3 podcast episode. I hope that through today's podcast, our listeners are educated and learned about this important preventable disease. I wish you the best of luck with your campaign as a Miami Beach mayor candidate in November. The city of Miami Beach is lucky to have you as a resident and leader.
Thank you. I love the city of Miami Beach, and I'm honored to be running for mayor. I have the support of many residents over many years, and all I can say is I will always do everything in my power to make our city better, focus on public safety, and make sure that residents have the quality of life that we deserve.
And always, thank you very much for your support towards H3's mission and work in our communities. As October Breast Cancer Month is approaching, stay tuned for our next exciting and informative episode with our South Florida breast cancer radiologist, Dr. Nilza Kalos. Dr. Kalos has been an H3 supporter since its early days when we were still a breast cancer support group. She will share many interesting facts about breast cancer throughout her career. In addition, H3 is presenting its 7th annual open panel discussion about cancer event. This year, we are partnering with Gilda's Club and Sharsharet Jewish Breast Cancer Organization. The event will take place in Fort Lauderdale at the new Gilda's Club venue. The panel topic will be about the disparities Black women face in breast cancer diagnosis and treatment. Moreover, we are working on the Healing Angels event, venue to be determined. Stay tuned for these events and so much more. For more information about H3's work or specific dates of the next episode, please visit our website, h3hope.org, or email us at info@h3hope.org. This is H3, wishing you health, hope, and healing. Thank you all.